So once again, the AR-15 has been in the news a whole lot lately. Before we're going to do a little talking about the AR-15 here, but before we get into that, I got to talk about a couple things regarding the Second Amendment. Okay, the Second Amendment is not about hunting. Back when the Second Amendment was written, if you didn't hunt, you were either a vegetarian or you starved to death. The Second Amendment has absolutely nothing to do with hunting. The other thing that people always bring up, ignorant people always bring up, is that the Second Amendment was written and it only covers muskets. Okay, to suggest something like that would ignores the fact that the founding fathers who wrote the Second Amendment, first off, it would ignore all their other writings besides the Second Amendment, but getting beyond that, it ignores the fact that they witnessed the evolution of firearms. You're suggesting that they somehow thought that the muskets were the end-all evolution of firearms, which is not remotely accurate. There were weapons at the time that were multiple-shot firearms. There were other guns besides muskets at the time that the Second Amendment was written. So suggesting that is just ignorant. So we hear the phrase or the question often asked, why do you need an AR-15? Or nobody needs an AR-15. But you have to look at who's asking that question. Is this a self-defense expert that's talking to you, who's asking that question or making that statement? Is this a firearms expert? Or is this some liberal anti-gun politician or liberal anti-gun celebrity who's making comments like that? After this video, hopefully you'll be able to answer that question for yourself. First of all, as many have noted, there is no requirement to demonstrate a need to exercise your right. So nobody needs an AR-15, that's a bunch of BS. Okay, I don't have to demonstrate a need in order for me to exercise a right. Did Rosa Parks need to sit in the front of the bus? Does someone have to demonstrate a need before they're able to say whatever they want? Okay. Needs have nothing to do with rights. The other thing we hear often is the AR-15 is a weapon of war and it has no place on our streets. Well, first off, the AR-15 is not remotely a weapon of war. The AR-15, while it has some cosmetic similarities to an M16, which is a military rifle, the AR-15 is not a military rifle. Has not ever been used by the military. The significant difference between the AR-15 and an M16 is the fact that the AR-15 is semi-auto only, whereas the M16 is either, it's a select fire rifle, so it's either, has the capability of either full auto fire or burst fire. Burst fire is, say, a 3-round burst. You pull the trigger, 3 rounds fire. Full auto is you pull the trigger and it keeps firing until you let go of the trigger. While the two guns look similar, they are not the same. Another thing that comes up routinely from certain morons of notoriety, Michael Moore, AR-15 bullets do not explode when they hit people. AR-15 bullets, the AR-15 round that's fired by the AR-15, the 223 or 5.56 NATO, has not been outlawed. It's not illegal according to the Geneva Convention. It is the NATO round. Every NATO country, that's their primary round. Michael Moore does not know what he's talking about. He is just an idiot. Other people suggest that the AR-15 fires an extremely high-powered rifle round. Okay, the AR-15 is not a high-powered rifle. It is actually a very low-powered rifle as far as in the overall scheme of things. The round fired by the AR-15 in many states, including the one in which I live, is not even legal to hunt with. It's restricted for like varmint use. You can't hunt deer with it. In fact, the round fired by the AR-15 in combat has proved ineffective at some times. And the military, on a number of occasions recently, has looked at going to a different caliber, which is what caused things like the 6.8 SPC to come out and 300 Blackout. There's a number of other rounds that they've looked at to replace the 5.56 round because of its ineffectiveness in combat. So, it is not a high-powered rifle round like they make you think. All right, now that we've got those silly arguments out of the way, let's talk about why not only I want an AR-15, but why I need an AR-15. Okay, needs are determined on lots of things. Okay, and so I'm going to go through and talk about a few things here. The AR-15 is an ideal home defense weapon. Okay, it offers a lot of things that other guns do not. There is a reason that SWAT teams across this country have moved away from their submachine guns that they used to carry. Primarily, you would see SWAT teams from the 70s all the way up through early 90s, and even still some carry today. A lot of them carry the H&K MP5, which is a fantastic submachine gun. H&K MP5 fires a 9mm round, which is basically a handgun round, which is why it's a submachine gun. The problem is, the reason they're moving away from the MP5 has nothing to do with the gun. It has to do with the cartridge. When discussing why SWAT teams have switched from the MP5 or other subguns to the AR-15, it's important to talk about overpenetration. Overpenetration is the ability of the projectile fired by the gun to travel through the target and through potential backstops. In the real world, backstops are like sheetrock walls and doors, things like that. At the range, it's not really, it doesn't really matter because your backstop's going to stop whatever you're shooting at it, whatever firearm you're shooting at it. But in the real world, where team members or innocent civilians could be standing behind a wall, overpenetration becomes very important. 9mm rounds, the round fired by most submachine guns that were used by law enforcement and military, they have a projectile that typically weighs between 115 and 147 grains, depending on what ammo you choose. That's a reasonably heavy bullet for the size. 9mm rounds tend to overpenetrate more than a .223 round. I took a couple of rounds apart here real quickly just to show the difference. This is a 9mm projectile out of my duty ammo I carry at work. It's 147 grain Federal HST. That's the projectile that's fired out of my handgun. This is a 55 grain .223 round. I don't recall, I think it was Wolf Gold. It's a 55 grain projectile, significantly lighter, significantly smaller than a 9mm handgun round. This is where physics and all that other stuff comes into play, speed and weight and all that stuff, okay? The 9mm projectile, they've done tests, they tend to overpenetrate. They go further through sheetrock, they go further through walls and doors than the lighter .223 projectile. That is why so many SWAT teams have switched from 9mm subguns to AR-15s. Okay, so let's talk about the AR versus my handgun. Okay, so here, all my guns here have been cleared, safety check. This is my Glock 17. This is a 9mm handgun. This is what I carry on duty at work. This is, I carry usually a Glock 19 off duty, just a little bit smaller. Fires the same round. It's an excellent weapon. However, it does have some drawbacks. It's got a small Picatinny rail here, which allows me to put a flashlight on it. But it also, I'm limited. It only can hold so much ammo. Typical for this gun is a 17 round magazine is standard. It has fixed iron sights. When moving around the house, if I'm in a home defense scenario, as I'm coming around corners, it would be very easy for a bad guy who knows I'm coming to reach up, grab my gun, and pry it out of my hands if I'm not expecting him to be there as I round a corner. Okay, so the ability for me to hang on to this gun is limited. The amount of firepower that I bring to a gunfight is limited. 17 rounds, most of my magazines have +2 extenders on them, so 19 rounds plus one in the chamber. So there's 20 rounds. I've got 20 rounds in this gun. 9mm rounds have come long ways. They've come great distances recently compared to what 9mm used to do as far as stopping power, but it's limited in its ability compared to a .223 round. The .223 round has greater potential lethality. So that's talking about the 9mm handgun. Here's an AR-15. This is my duty gun. This is also a gun that I keep around the house. The AR-15 has the ability to do things like mount lights, just like my handgun does, but more importantly, I have a red dot optic on this. The red dot optic allows me to use this gun while both eyes are open. I have a better field of view. I can better easily differentiate potential targets from being family members, good guys, or bad guys. The gun is short enough in length that I can maneuver around the house, but it also has the ability to have a sling on it, which means I sling the rifle up while I'm working, trying to clear my house to make sure that, or engaging a bad guy in my home. If the bad guy grabs onto this gun, he's not getting it away from me. He can't take it away from me. We can fight over it, but he's not going to get it away from me and be able to use it on me. Okay. Also, if something happens and I need to go hands-free, I can let the rifle drop and hang on the sling. If I wake up in the middle of the night, it's very easy for me to throw a sling on over my shoulder and go deal with something. If I wake up in the middle of the night and I grab my handgun, if I have to go hands-on with something, I'm not going to have a holster. I'm going to have to figure out what to do with my handgun. I don't have that same issue with the rifle. Additionally, I live in the country and I have some livestock. I've got goats. If something is out attacking one of my goats, I can not only, because of this light has a lot farther reach than the light on my handgun, it's much more powerful light, I can see better with it. I also have the ability at further distances to shoot a coyote if it happens to be attacking my goats. Okay, so there's several reasons why I choose an AR-15 over a handgun in a home defense scenario. I have seen videos where certain gun store owners talk about a shotgun being an ideal home defense weapon. Totally disagree with that. Okay, one of the things I've heard, and it's very old school thinking, is you don't need to aim with a shotgun. That's a bunch of bull. Shotguns, while they do fire multiple projectiles, here's a 12 gauge double buck round that I cut open. And let me get one out here. A 12 gauge double buck round is a very common round for law enforcement in a shotgun. It's a common home defense round. This is a projectile that's fired by that. It fires 9 of these projectiles. That's a 32 caliber ball bearing, basically a lead ball. Okay, its weight is, I didn't weigh it. I would say it's probably about the same as the one projectile fired by the AR-15, the 55 grain. It may be a little bit heavier, but it's firing 9 of them. Okay, I have to worry about, every time I fire that shotgun, I have to worry about where 9 projectiles are going. Okay, you don't need to aim the shotgun. At 15 yards out of an 18-inch barreled shotgun, you're going to have a group maybe that big. Okay, that's not going to spread and get the whole hallway. So if there's a bad guy in your hall, you don't just get to fire some random shot down the hall without aiming and assume you're going to hit him. You're going to be wasting rounds. You're going to be throwing projectiles through walls. So when talking about shotguns, they tend to overpenetrate more than either a handgun or a rifle. You have to worry about where 9 projectiles are going, but there's some other drawbacks to the shotgun. Okay, one of them is, let's stand them up here. My shotgun is significantly longer than my AR-15. Obviously a lot longer than my handgun. So when maneuvering through the home, I have to worry about rounding corners with a long gun. The longer the gun, the harder it is to get it back up on target if I engage something that's around a corner. Beyond that, I already talked about the 9 projectiles every time you fire it, but I've only got, this is a extended magazine shotgun, Remington 870. This is just one of their generic ones that came out recently. 7 rounds. If I happen to top off the gun when I grab it, I've got 8 rounds in this. That's less than my handgun. Despite what some lawmakers want to do, the whole magazine capacity limit with 10 rounds, none of those people have ever been in a gunfight. If you're in a gunfight, things don't go like they do on a static range. Okay, adrenaline's flowing. It's usually limited visibility at low light things. You aren't necessarily going to hit what you're shooting at the first round. Okay, if I'm going to be in a gunfight, I want to bring more than 7 or 8 rounds to my gunfight. I don't want to be limited to that. If I'm grabbing a gun because something's going on in my house, I'm not going to have time to grab a bandolier of shotgun rounds and throw them over my shoulder. I'm not saying anything bad about shotguns. Shotguns do have their place. They are not my choice for home defense tools. I did forget to address this earlier when I was talking about the AR-15. with the red dot sight, or some people use a low magnification 1 to 4, 1 to 6 power optics on their guns, even with iron sights. You have a greater sight radius, you have better accuracy with that gun than you do with a shotgun or with a handgun. The inherent accuracy in the rifle is just greater. It allows you to be more precise with shots. If I'm in a home defense scenario and my family is in the home, my accuracy is going to be very important to me. I do not want to miss and potentially hit one of my family members. So that is why I need an AR-15. It's not up to the government to determine what I need. It's not up to politicians or anti-gun celebrities to determine what my needs are. It's my choice what I need. That is why I need an AR-15. You may not need one. Michael Moore may not need one. Kevin DeLeon may not need one. Kevin Ghost Gun DeLeon may not need one. I need one. Again, not that I need to express a need in order to exercise one of my rights.